Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for inviting and thanks everyone for coming. Okay, so yeah, please feel free to interrupt. So this is ongoing work. So I'll describe some of our data collection methodology. So a lot of focus will be on the data collection, not a lot on the results, but we are working on the results. So your feedback and your questions on the methodology and what we're doing will help. So this is joint work with Simon Chauchard. He's a political scientist based in Madrid. Okay, so in general, okay, this is about WhatsApp. We don't think of like chat apps as social networks, but chat apps like, there's a bunch of those like WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, iMessage, Viber, Telegram, Signal, so on. I'm pretty sure most of us here in this room are a member of at least one of those these platforms. And a lot of these have like very, very huge popularity. 5 of these have at least 1 billion users using them. So they're very big platforms. And a lot of them also have this concept of end-to-end encryption, where a message is encrypted on the sender side and decrypted on the receiver side. So the platform itself cannot see the content. So there's little moderation. So particularly WhatsApp is this giant social network, which is also a chat app, which has over 2 billion monthly active users globally. And particularly more so in countries like India and Brazil, where hundreds of millions of people potentially use it. Even in the US, where there's especially recently with Twitter changing ownership, lack of access to data, people have been complaining a lot about Twitter. But in the US, like 100 million people use WhatsApp, so it's much more than Twitter. Twitter is only a quarter of the population. WhatsApp is much more widely used. And in general, in the research community, there's very little focus on WhatsApp because data collection on WhatsApp is very hard. And one of the features of an encrypted platform is that even the platform does not have access to data, right? Like, so they can see that A sent a message to B. They cannot see what the content of the message is. So things like how bad is misinformation on WhatsApp? These questions we don't have a clear answer. Even the platform does not know. And like there are these bad things, like misinformation is one example of that, where especially in some of the countries that I mentioned, like India, Brazil, Mexico, and so on, there have been these offline consequences because of misinformation spreading online. Like for instance, rumors that spread in India during a certain period in 2018, 2019 led to actually offline violence. So online rumors leading to offline violence. This is at scale. Dozens of people have been killed, because of rumors that were primarily abetted by WhatsApp, right? So there's lots of instances like this. So the same rumor, so the rumor was about children being kidnapped in villages, and whenever a stranger entered a village, people would assume that they're a child kidnapper, and they would just violence would break out. The same rumor, actually the same video, then a year later spread in Mexico, where again it led to really violent incidents. And this is a consequence of encryption, right? So WhatsApp is not able to do anything. I mean, they knew, as civil society journalists were writing about, okay, this is the video that's spreading, but nothing could be done about it. And then there's also consequences like political trolling, propaganda, where well-resourced actors could misuse the platform, and things like these happen. So this is from, again, a few years old now, but some of the political parties, this is in India, for a local election, created tens of thousands of WhatsApp groups, so creating this sort of ecosystem to create and spread political information, also political propaganda. It's the same in the case of Brazil. WhatsApp was widely abused. And so this is a video of a guy, he's showing off the WhatsApp groups he's a member of, and that guy is Bolsonaro. So he was the president of Brazil, a far-right party leader, and their party really effectively used WhatsApp at scale to spread propaganda, misinformation, hate speech, things like that. This is one example of that happening. So in terms of the discussion around what can be done, there's a binary where WhatsApp on the one end is saying, okay, because of encryption, we don't see the content. Encryption is good, it's private, but we can't do anything. And On the other end, like there's governments, like the Indian government particularly has an extreme view on this, is like asking WhatsApp, okay, break encryption. And there's laws now that say, okay, you should break encryption because we want to moderate and we want to do some sort of moderation. In some cases, that's genuine. Like there's this rumor spreading and like hundreds of people are being impacted. There should be some way of law enforcement on this, but they're not able to do that. Like so, there's this sort of binary view here, and what is missing is this sort of like, okay, data-driven evidence, like where, okay, how much of WhatsApp is misinformation, right? Like how big of a problem is this? How prevalent is misinformation? What can you do to prevent misinformation? Like in this discussion, you want to add some sort of data and evidence. And so there are these kinds of questions of, in general, broad questions about misinformation on WhatsApp that we want to potentially answer. Things like, okay, who's producing it, who's consuming it, how is it spreading, what is spreading, what can be done to stop it. So particularly the goal for this talk and the data collection model that we developed is to answer these questions at a population level. So you want to understand like how prevalent is misinformation, like who is producing misinformation, how is it spreading, things like that at a population level. So that's the idea. Okay, so for that, the big challenge is data collection. Right? So, and again, like very typical problem for WhatsApp is that even the platform does not have access to this data. And obviously there's lots of private data and there are no APIs. So the model we chose is data donation, where we have end users donate their data. So users on the platform actually have their own data, like they own the data, like the platform does not have it. So this is where we develop this privacy-preserving opt-in model for data collection, where users give us access to the WhatsApp groups that they are a part of. Okay, so users donate us access to the WhatsApp groups that they are a part of. And the data is collected through an on-ground survey in various parts of India and Brazil. So these are the two contexts in which we did like large-scale on-ground studies. I'm going to mainly talk about the data collection from India in this talk. We also have other, I'll briefly show that in a second. And so this is India, and this is where we got the data. Like, so this is a region where we want to get estimates, or like population level estimates of like things like what people are seeing on WhatsApp, particularly misinformation. Okay, you might ask, why do I care about this small region in India? Okay, it's a small region, but there's this very nice plot. This is that orange region, has a population of 230 million people, which is larger than all of these other countries here in purple. So it's like the 4th largest country or something by population. So it's a small region, but very populous region. Okay, so how did we do this? We developed a tool to collect private WhatsApp data, WhatsApp group data, in a legal, ethical, and practical way. The practical is key because that helps us like scale this to large numbers of users. The technology here is that it's a clone of web WhatsApp. So we created a clone of web WhatsApp that we're running on our servers, where users can prefer and choose to donate their data. So they have control over what data they donate. I'll show you how that looks in a second. And so this is, if you're interested, the code for this is public now. So the steps that go in this process is we approach people, we explain to them what we are going to do with the data, go through the consent process, and provide like what incentives we're going to give them. We generate a QR code which they scan from their WhatsApp account. So if you use web WhatsApp, you scan a QR code and log into a WhatsApp account. So basically, the donation here is that authentication. So a QR code is generated on our end. They scan the QR code and they're providing us authentication to query WhatsApp on their behalf. And so, okay, you generate a QR code. Then you see a screen with a subset of groups that you are a part of. So we are only getting group data. Because of privacy reasons, we don't want to get like personal one-to-one messaging. We're only getting data from groups. So you can choose which groups you want to donate. Certain groups are not even eligible for donation, like these kinds of groups, like which have small numbers of members, are not eligible. So we are concentrating on groups with at least 5 members. And that's an arbitrary number that defines large groups. So we said, okay, 2 is too small. more than 5, and we had a pilot that got this sort of distribution of group sizes and decided, okay, 5 is a good number, and with a certain amount of activity. So you have to have a certain amount of activity to be eligible. And you can exclude groups. So you can say, I don't want to donate this group, and you can exclude the donation. And then once they do that, we get, from the day we recruit them, you get data going back 2 months and going forward 2 months, or until you choose to kick us out. So users have the choice to remove access for us. So they can do that immediately. So we, at least for each user, get 2 months of data going back. We also get the network. So all your contacts and who you are chatting with. So full set of contacts and the set of people who you are in touch with on WhatsApp. And there's a lot of anonymization. I'll talk about this in a second. Like this, where this is happening before the content is stored on our servers. And then there's a small survey. The survey includes like demographic questions and questions about what groups they donated and what groups they did not donate. So we know, like for instance, if you did not donate a specific group, we ask you, okay, why did you not donate this group? So we just know the name of the group and why they did not donate that group. And then they get some money. So there's $10 in India and around $30 in Brazil. So here's how it looks in practice. Like, so this is this guy is our surveyor. This person is donating the data. This phone is running our WhatsApp Explorer tool where we are generating that QR code. And so this person takes their phone, scans the QR code, goes through the donation process. It takes like less than 5 minutes for the entire thing. Okay, so one of the biggest challenges, I mean, we had to go through an extensive ethics review process. Obviously, you can see like a lot of this data is extremely private. One of the biggest challenges, even today, that we do not have a clear response to is in terms of like if you're donating data from a big group, let's say 50 people, one of them is giving consent. So what do you do for data that is, the others have not consented? The way we approach that is that we only analyze viral content from people who did not consent to donate the data. So let's say all of us are in a group and I donated data to this study. So, but we are capturing all the data, but we are only analyzing data from someone else who has not donated, who has not consented, if it is marked as forwarded many times by WhatsApp. So what that means is forwarded many times is a tag that WhatsApp attaches to a message if it was forwarded at least 5 hops from the original sender. So that means, I sent it to Ingmar, Ingmar sent it to someone else, they sent it to someone else. So 5 hops on a network is usually a very large number of people, could potentially mean like tens of thousands of people. So what we're assuming is that even if you have not consented, we are looking at messages, if you have sent it, if they're forwarded many times, meaning that they're not personal messages that are related to this group or only related between you and me, but these are, in general, messages that many, many others have seen and many, many others have also forwarded. So that's the objective. And then there's lots of anonymization that goes. So no data is stored on our servers before anonymization. So everything goes through an anonymization process. So we're removing names, emails, phone numbers, faces. So we are anonymizing faces before the content is stored. Obviously, there's anonymization and privacy is a big thing. Like, and this is chat data, including multimodal content. So it's not perfect anonymization, but we are doing our best to do whatever we can. At least the immediate things like emails and phone numbers that are associated with WhatsApp accounts, they're not being stored on our server, so we cannot really identify the users. Okay, so any questions until now? Okay, so then one of the key things here is, okay, we have this tool and we are going on the ground. Like I said, like the objective is to get some sort of population level estimates, right? And for that, what would we would ideally do is you could do a random sample, right? Like you go and knock on random doors, get people randomly, then you could get like a representative sample. And so that's what we actually designed for. Like, so we said, okay, we'll have this region, like in each village, we'll go to a random door, knock on a random door, ask people. But then what we realized quickly is that this is not practical, this is not scalable. That's because even though like, there are 500 million Indians on WhatsApp, not many people use WhatsApp actively. So to be eligible for donation, to to donate in our study. So we found a bunch of issues, like people either don't own a smartphone or don't have internet, don't use WhatsApp, don't use WhatsApp actively, so on. Like, so that was not a practical way of doing things. So then we designed this thing of this like quota sampling, but glorified type of quota sampling. Quota sampling as in, so we recruit influencers or people who are famous or popular in a village. So these are usually done through networks. And the popular person is usually the head of the village, like a sarpanch it's called, or like a local journalist. So we identify these people. For each village that we go to, village or town or city that we are sampling, I'll show you how we did that. We have census data through which we have like distributions of various demographics. So we know, okay, this is how many young people are there, old people are there, men, women, caste, religion, and so on. So we have distributions. And then we set a target for them. We say, okay, in your village, we want to recruit 100 people, and this is the distribution that you should follow. And we get that sample through that. So this is quota sampling through which you can, again, it's not random samplings, but this is also a way through which you can adjust and reweight your samples so that you can get some sort of population level estimates. Okay, so this data donation model is very powerful. Like it's quite generalizable at this point. I mean, we've been doing this for 2 years now, deploying this tool. And I really think that we've deployed this in multiple contexts. So in the US, during the recent elections, in Sierra Leone in Africa, Colombia, Indonesia. And what I seriously think is that this could potentially solve the problem of like large-scale studies on WhatsApp, where you're able to easily collect large amounts of data to understand things like, okay, what is spreading virally on such a platform, right? And so here's some data, like some of the samples that I've collected myself. Like some of these are large samples, some of them are small. So for instance, India and Sierra Leone, they're large samples. Like India has 3,500 users. In Sierra Leone, it's around 1,800. The others are all small pilots, but still you get like hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of messages from these, which give you a first view of like group activity on WhatsApp and what people are consuming. So let me just. The
messages, these are viral messages.
No, these are all the messages. These are all the messages. Out of these, I'll show you the fraction of viral messages that we're actually focusing on. Okay, so let me focus on the Indian sample, like the way we did it in India. The way we did it is, okay, so this is this region of Uttar Pradesh, like around here. Each of these points is a village. So there are 100 villages here, and they were sampled to represent like this sort of different areas in this state, like in this region. And each village, we sample 350 users according to this distribution. Like so, and this covers like things like diversity in terms of access, being close to urban centers. Like for instance, a lot of these regions are close to Delhi, so they're like semi-urban. Some of these villages here are like villages. Some of those are close to smaller towns, which are not necessarily near the capital city. So it captures a lot of diversity in terms of location, like either urban, rural kind of thing, but also things like representation, like there are regions here which are supporters of like a certain political parties. So there's certain strongholds of other political parties. So we have this sort of diversity. So this is how and these villages were chosen in a way, like again, like I said, where we have census data, where we can get these sorts of estimates. And the Indian data is around this, like around 8,600 groups, 3,500 people, 100 villages, and 350 people around approximately in each village. Okay, so let's get into some stats of data on like how many groups people donated. So what this plot is showing is the number of groups that people have. So these are the first two bars are the number of groups that people are a member of. So, and in Brazil, it's around 23 on average, 23 groups. In India, it's around 16. So these are the groups that people are a part of on average. The second set of bars is showing groups that are eligible. So meaning, these are groups with at least 5 members and at least a certain amount of activity. So when I say representative sample, it's not completely representative because already it's only studying groups and only studying the sort of active groups, so which is already maybe a third of like the eligible groups. So there's some caveats on that, but still, like the important thing is the comparison between this and this. So to show how well the data donation works. So what we are interested in is this is what people actually donated. So on average, if people have 5 groups in Brazil, they donated 4 groups. In India, it's even better. Like, I mean, people are not unselecting a lot of groups. So for the groups that they are eligible for, most people are donating most of them. So this is the sample that we're going to look at, right? Like, so it is definitely a smaller chunk of all the groups that people are a part of. But yeah, this is the sample that we're going to look at. Okay, so just some other stats on how the thing went. So basically, one of the objectives for this was to deploy this data collection during the Indian election. And the Indian election took place over like the 6-week period in last year, in April, between April 19th and June 1st. So the idea was to collect most of our data so we can have some data on the prevalence of misinformation, effects of misinformation during election, things like that. So we had done a lot of planning to make sure that the data was collected during that. And this is a cumulative count of the number of people who were in our sample. Like one thing is that, okay, most of the, like there's this peak here, like, okay, we started collecting in April and it actually went on beyond the election. There's this straight line here, which is like shocking, like really, so WhatsApp shut the thing down exactly during the election. And there was this 2-week period during which we were not able to collect any data. So that was hard, like, because it took like, I don't know, a year and a half of preparation to get to that, and it shut down during the election. But luckily, okay, we still extended the data collection a bit, and we went until August to finish our quotas. And because for each user, you get data going back 2 months and going forward 2 months, this plot shows the number of active users that we have in our sample during each week. So what we see is, especially between these two bars here, the start and the end of the election, we consistently have around 3,000 active users in our sample, so which is fine, like at least because of the protocol, because even though we collected data in August, because you could go back and get the data, we are able to get like these sorts of 3,000 active users during the election period. So this is good. Okay, so I mean, I have a bunch of plots on various demographics. We try to really do a good job trying to cover like religion, gender, age, caste, and so on. So I'll just show age here, like just to show you, okay, we don't have a lot of older people. They're not online, but most most of our data is around under the age of 45. Another interesting thing is that this is a distribution of the modalities in the data set. So images, video, audio, text, and so on. Chat is text. So only 47% of the content in India is text. Only 56% in Brazil is text. The rest is all other modalities. So that informs our types of analysis that we are trying to do, is that you really cannot just extend your text analysis methods here. So unsurprisingly, there's also differences like India versus Brazil in terms of images. So in India, it's around 40% of the data is images. In Brazil, there's lots of audio and video, like around double the content in India. Another thing is about virality. We also have information on forwarded, number of times the message is forwarded. So, and WhatsApp keeps track of you can have it forwarded 0 times. So I sent it to Ingmar. 1 time is okay, Ingmar then sent it to someone else. So that's forwarded 1 time. And then 2, 3, 4. After 4, WhatsApp does not keep track of it. So they just say 5 or more is forwarded many times. This is our sample, like the base sample that we are going to work with to get these sort of misinformation estimates and so on. So it's only 1% of the entire data set. But we also have that other, like, estimates of those other things. Like, and again, surprisingly, in India, the amount of forwarded content like that we see in the data is like much, much higher than Brazil. So 16% of the messages are forwarded messages compared to 5-6% in Brazil. So yeah, 1 to 4 are marked as forwarded on the WhatsApp interface. After that, they're marked as forwarded many times. Okay, so basically in terms of the results showing the prevalence and so on, I don't have the full results for the data during the elections. Hopefully we'll have it soon. But the results I'm going to show you are from an older pilot data, so almost a year ago, more than a year ago, which is around, it's not as big, it's around 350 users, so a tenth of what we have. But I think it'll just give you a sense of like the scale of some of these problems and of the misinformation and hate speech and things like that. So again, this is a caveat, just keep that in mind. Okay, before I go into the results, I just want to give you some related work so that you can place these results in context. There's some caveats here again, but just a very quick recap of like related work in this space. So in terms of prevalence of misinformation, most of the studies have been done on platforms like Twitter, Facebook, and so on, like large studies. They show around a very low fraction of misinformation, so around 2 to 5% on these very large, like platform-wide representative samples. And in general, the agreement is that misinformation is not that common, like it's around low single digits. Not many people see it. It's only seen by a small fraction of people. So that's the agreement. In terms of hate speech, there are again official reports that the platforms release, the transparency reports. And on Facebook, it's very, very low. Hate speech explicit is very clearly removed. Like Facebook does a very good job at that. So it's almost non-existent. Even on a platform like Gab, this is an academic study. On Gab is this far-right platform, very little moderation and so on. Explicit hate speech is around 2%. So that's, just gives you a sense of like, okay, how not so common is that. Then in terms of prevalence of political news or propaganda, so propaganda is probably a subset of political news. There's this very large study in Science on how much people are consuming news on social media, and around the estimate is around 14% consume political news. So this again just gives us a sense of like the scale. And obviously there are caveats here, like all of these are on normal social media, open social media where there's lots of moderation, like Facebook, Twitter do moderate. So there's, things like hate speech, for instance, are removed easily because of moderation. But we're going to compare that to WhatsApp. So they're not comparable, but just gives us a sense. Okay, so the top line result, okay, before that, how did we annotate this content? So basically, we annotated manually 2,000 pieces of content. This is all viral content that was spreading during this 2-month period during which we ran our pilot. So this is all of the viral content in our data set. And we only annotated content that is forwarded many times. So this is viral content on WhatsApp. And this is only 1% of the total content, like I said. Annotation was done by one person who is a professional fact checker. So their job is to like identify misinformation on social media. They work for this big fact checking organization in India that's part of the Facebook third-party fact checking program. So they do this full time. Okay, so the top line result is that 1/5 or 22% of the viral content in our data set is misinformation, right? So that's a really high number. Like, if you're receiving a lot of this sort of viral content, 1 in 5 of those being misinformation, that's really high. In terms of hate speech, so we just have hate speech and these two, like propaganda, either by the government in power or propaganda against opposition. The other two categories are propaganda by the opposition or propaganda against the ruling party. They're almost non-existent, so that's why I don't have those here. But hate speech is around 8.5%. So 1 in 11 messages is hate speech. And in terms of propaganda, it's around this sort of, on average, it's either pro-government or anti-opposition is around like 7 to 13%. So again, like a super high number. So we also annotated a bunch of these categories just for us to understand like prevalence in terms of various other categories. Yeah, go ahead.
In the previous slide, there was on the y-axis you mentioned prevalence.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just explain what is this? Like, this is the fraction of message or fraction of people that?
No, it's just fraction of messages. Out of the 2,000 messages we annotated, how many are marked as hate speech? And these are overlapping, so the 8.5 could also include the misinformation, the 22% could also include hate speech, and so they're all overlapping. So this is all the categories that we annotated for, and just gives us a sense of like what is viral on WhatsApp in general. So there's lots of religious content, which is viral, so around a third of the content is religious. Entertainment is only around 11%, which was surprising. I thought like there'll be a lot more of entertainment content, but it's not that much. Good morning messages, like these are like very staple of the Indian, in general South Asia. Like, I've seen this a lot. Yeah, a lot of people connect to this. So the surprising thing with this, these are viral good morning messages. So these are not even original. So I received something and then I sent it to someone, just forwarded it, they forwarded it. Like, so these are widely spreading, around 4%. Health advice, again, lots of it is misinformation, is around 3%. Porn, which is very popular online, anything online will have porn. So 1.6, again, is viral porn, like meaning, okay, I received it and then I forwarded it, they forwarded it, so on. Okay, so just to look back at this sort of these results that I showed you. So the overall prevalence of misinformation might be rare. So what I'm saying is not that people are inundated with misinformation. I'm not saying that. We don't know that, right? So the overall prevalence in terms of, if I get like 1,000 pieces of content a day, like we don't know how much of that is misinformation. What I'm just saying is that it's disproportionately viral. So out of the viral content that a person receives, 1/5 of that is misinformation. So that's very important. So the story is not that you're inundated with misinformation. It's just that of the things that are spreading virally, a lot of it is misinformation, which is also very problematic, even though it may be just 1% of all the content that people are receiving. Then this sort of prevalence of hate speech and propaganda is extremely high compared to these other platforms, and part of it is lack of moderation, but also part of it is like maybe the ecosystem that where, for instance, politics and religion are like tied together, and lots of anti-Muslim sentiments and so on. And the hard truth is that this is all organically viral, right? Like this is content that is being spread by people, like there's forwarding, and these are all real people. There's no bots here. Like we recruited these real people, right? And they are consuming these and they're forwarding this. These are people that are organically spreading this information. So there's no algorithms as well here, right? So that's another very important thing, is that all of this is organically viral. Okay, so in terms of what we are doing now, in terms of doing this for the bigger data set, we're annotating a much larger data set that we collected during the election. And the main goals here are like that we're going to annotate all the viral content, which is around 7,000 pieces of content. But then we also want to get some sort of denominator for prevalence of misinformation, overall prevalence, so that you can say, okay, X% of a person's consumption is misinformation. And then we are doing other random samples of groups and users. So this is a big task, like tens of thousands of pieces of content is being annotated. So one of the next things we are trying to do is, once we have that, we're trying to release some of this data for the community. Particularly once you have the larger annotation, this is going to be probably thousands of pieces of content, multilingual, multimodal, like so a lot of it is images and video, conversational data, which is also very rare for our field, like so this sort of conversational data. And this is annotated for a wide range of items. Like I showed you there, we had like 30 categories or so for which we are annotating. And we have done some work on estimating the reach of misinformation. So for instance, we have the network of people. It's incomplete, but we can estimate based on the network patterns how these things spread. So for instance, we have the partial network and we have the traces. So we know it was seen in group 1, group 2, group 3 at time T1, T2, T3. And based on that, you can reconstruct these cascades. So I'll not go into the details, but and then you can use that to estimate like how many people have seen various types of content. You can get these sorts of curves of like, okay, if it's misinformation, potentially based on the group size and the way it's spreading in the network, you can estimate that it has reached around 100,000 people. in our data set, whereas other non-misinformation viral content reached around 57,000 people. So you can get these sorts of estimates. Other things we're doing is study the impact of elections on misinformation. So are elections really increasing the amount of misinformation or hate speech that is being spread? And this is a very good data set to study that, because we have this election take place over different phases, and we have data collected across different phases, before and after. For instance, this is our sample in different villages, and this region, the election took place on a certain date, so April 26th, and this other region in red, the election took place on May 7th. So you can see, after this region, the election finished, did the amount of misinformation drop off? And because they're neighboring districts, you can really compare and see whether it's an effect of the region or because of the election and so on. Another thing that I'm really focused on these days is building these tools in general beyond WhatsApp. So we have data from tools for these other platforms: Facebook, YouTube, Telegram, Instagram. We just released this paper along with some data sets. It's not public yet, but you can check it out. So where we are releasing tools for these 5 platforms to collect data. So these are some way of getting data from these. Some of these are existing. I mean, people have thought of those. Some of those are creative ways of getting data, but they all provide very new types of data. So browsing histories of a lot of people from YouTube, they're all scalable. That enables us to get this sort of very large data sets. And all of these also provide the demographics of the users that are donating the data. So that will help us get different types of social media data that we can study. Okay, so just to summarize, these platforms like WhatsApp are very important. We developed this data donation technique to enable this sort of large-scale data donation. We developed this novel sampling strategy to be able to collect representative data. And we're now doing this sort of large-scale manual effort to understand and categorize content consumption. So one thing that I really think with this type of data is that there are broader implications beyond misinformation. I mean, one thing we as a community are really focused on is, how much misinformation is there? But misinformation, eventually is going to be a very, very small portion of what people are consuming. There might be these other things, especially for data like this, which is very new. Others have not looked at this, to understand and know, what are people consuming? How is it changing their behavior? What are positive aspects of some of this kind of data? That's, I think, the next step. And there's wide adoption of social media in countries like India, but there's no baseline of what people are seeing or how social media is being used. Hopefully, some of this data could help with that. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, thanks.